In this video, we're going to look at how we can build with Maven. So we've seen how we can create a project using Maven archetypes. This generates a simple project, a basic project as a starting point for our own projects out of the Maven Quick Start archetype. And we've seen that it has a source main Java folder for production source code and a source test Java folder for test source code. It also comes with a pom.xml, which is the main file in Maven, which describes the build customizations which our project has. Pretty much in Maven, you're not really writing a build file per se. You're more customizing an existing standardized build, which Maven comes with. And we'll see more about that when we look at build lifecycles a little later on. But first of all, let's just see how we can invoke Maven and run a few build commands. If I want to build the project which I have, so first off, let's just take a look, and we'll see that we don't have a target directory. So this means that the project hasn't been built before. Maven will create a target directory to generate all its build artifacts in during a build. So we don't have a target directory here, so we haven't built it before. Anyway, if we wanted to build this project, then we can give the phase of the build that we want to run. We'll talk more about phases later on when we look at the build lifecycle, but for now, for example, if I want to create the package, which is basically the jar file of this project, I can just type Maven package and enter. So as you can see, when I did this, the end output, you can see here that it's written a myapp 1.0 snapshot.jar file into the target directory. I can actually have a look at that directory and see what's inside. And we can see that inside the jar file, we have an app.class. This corresponds to the app source file that we saw earlier, which was generated. So this was the app class that was in the source main Java folder. Notice that we don't have app test in here, and we don't have app test in here because that's test code. So Maven makes a distinction between production source code and test code, and the build artifact which it's generating, which in this case is a jar file, won't include any of the test classes. This is because of a concept known as dependency scopes. Again, we'll cover that a little later on in the course, but for now, just know that it's created a jar file and we didn't really have to do anything. We didn't have to write a script to compile the source code. We didn't have to copy the class files into a temporary directory and then use some kind of jar task to be able to create the jar file. Maven's just done it all for us out of the box. Not only has Maven created this jar file for us, it's actually executed the prerequisite build steps required to get to the stage where it can even generate a jar file. If we look up at what actually happened here, we see a few things that have gone on. These are really the steps which Maven took to be able to generate the end jar file. So just to point a couple out, you can see here it's used the compiler plugin to compile the source code, and then it's used the Surefire plugin to test the source code. It's then run those tests, and then it's finally built the jar file itself. So this is how to create the jar file, to create the end build artifact. Just clear this down a second. Also, another thing I can do is I can just decide to clean the project. So if I clean the project, then as you can see, it's deleted the target directory. So this means we don't have the target directory any longer, which is correct. So this clears out all of the temporary files that were used in the build and the end resulting artifacts as well, which were held in the target directory. A few other things we can do as well. We can just decide to test the source code. So if we just type Maven test, then this will just run the tests. We can just compile the source code. And this just compiles the source code in the production sources directory. And we can also compile the test source code too. So this should really demonstrate how easy it is to use Maven and the functionality that's provided out of the box by the plugins, such that we don't really need to write any build scripts like we used to do with Ant or Bash scripts. And in the next videos, we'll dig in further.